My fiancée went live on Instagram and said she can't wait to marry this fool and take half, thinking I couldn't hear her from the kitchen. When I commented jokes on you, the wedding's canceled. Her face dropped midstream. She tried to play it off as a joke, but I'd already been questioning her motives for months. The next morning, I canceled everything and discovered she'd been planning to divorce me within a year to claim assets from my inheritance. My name is Tyler. I'm 32 years old, and I'm writing this from my home office at 1 a.m. because I can't wrap my head around what happened 3 days ago. Until this week, I thought I was weeks away from marrying the love of my life. I work as a financial advisor and had been planning what I thought would be the perfect wedding with my fiancée Vanessa, who's 29. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and our wedding was scheduled for next Saturday. I should have seen the red flags earlier, but love makes you ignore things you don't want to see. Vanessa worked as a social media influencer, which meant she was constantly on her phone, live streaming, posting content, and building her brand. She had about 50,000 followers across various platforms and was always talking about growing her audience and monetizing her content. I supported her dreams completely, even when it meant our private moments were often interrupted by her need to create content. The problem started about 6 months ago, right after my grandmother passed away and left me a substantial inheritance. My grandmother, Alina, who was 89, had been incredibly successful in real estate and left me nearly $2 million, plus her house and some valuable jewelry. It was life-changing money, and I was still processing the grief and the sudden financial security when Vanessa's behavior began to shift. She became obsessed with wedding planning in a way that felt different from normal bride excitement. She insisted on an expensive venue, a designer dress, and elaborate details that far exceeded what we'd originally budgeted. When I expressed concern about the costs, she'd remind me that I could afford it now and that we should celebrate properly. She pushed for a joint bank account, suggesting we combine our finances before the wedding to start our marriage as true partners. I hesitated about the joint account, and she accused me of not trusting her. She'd bring it up constantly, saying things like, "I thought we were building a life together, and I can't believe you're being so selfish about money." Eventually, I gave in and we opened a joint account, though I only transferred a portion of my inheritance into it. Vanessa also started making comments about my grandmother's house, which I'd inherited. She'd walk through it with me, pointing out renovations she wanted to make, talking about our future home and how we could really make it ours. She seemed more interested in the property value than the sentimental value it held for me. But the biggest red flag was how she talked about our relationship on social media. She'd post constantly about being engaged to a successful financial advisor and would hint at our comfortable lifestyle. She'd show off expensive restaurants we'd go to, vacations we'd take, and purchases she'd make with our joint account. It felt like she was performing our relationship for her followers rather than actually living it with me. 3 days ago, I was in the kitchen making dinner while Vanessa was in the living room doing one of her evening live streams. She did these almost daily, just chatting with her followers about her day, her upcoming wedding, and random topics. I usually tuned them out, but something in her tone caught my attention that night. I could hear her laughing and talking to her phone, and then she said something that made my blood run cold. "You guys have no idea how easy this is going to be. I can't wait to marry this fool and take half of everything. He inherited all this money from his grandmother and he's so trusting, he doesn't even realize what's happening." I froze at the stove, thinking I must have misheard her, but she continued. "I know it sounds mean, but you have to understand I've been planning this for months. The prenup conversation never even came up because he's too naive to think about protecting his assets. Once we're married, everything becomes community property. I'm thinking I'll give it about a year, maybe 2, then file for divorce and walk away with half of his inheritance plus the house." My hands started shaking. I could hear her followers commenting and she was reading them out loud. "Oh, Jenny asks if I feel guilty. Honestly, a little bit. He's actually a sweet guy and I do care about him, but you guys know how hard it's been for me to build my brand. This is just smart business. I'll be set for life, and I can focus on my content creation without worrying about money." I stood there in complete shock, holding a wooden spoon, listening to the woman I was supposed to marry in a week talk about our relationship like it was a business transaction. Like I was a mark in some elaborate con game. The best part is, he's already put money into a joint account, so I've been able to upgrade my wardrobe and book some amazing content creation trips. He thinks I'm just excited about the wedding, but I'm actually excited about the payout. I couldn't listen anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened her live stream. She was sitting on our couch, looking directly into the camera, smiling and chatting with her followers like she was discussing the weather, not plotting to destroy my life. I typed in the comments, "Joke's on you, the wedding's cancelled." I watched her face on my phone screen as she read the comment. Her expression changed from confident and smug to confused, then to horrified as she realized what username had posted it. Oh no, she said, her voice shaking. Tyler, are you watching this?" She looked toward the kitchen, and I walked into the living room, still holding my phone, still watching her live stream. "Hey babe," she said, her voice high and nervous. I was just joking around with my followers. You know how I am on camera, I say silly things for entertainment." I looked at her, then at my phone screen, where hundreds of comments were flooding in from her followers. Some were laughing, some were shocked, some were calling her out for being awful. "That was quite a joke," I said calmly. "Very detailed joke, very specific joke." "Tyler, please, can we talk about this privately? I need to end this stream." "No, don't end it. Your followers seem invested in the story. Tell them about the part where you convinced me to open a joint account. Tell them about how you've been spending my inheritance money on content creation trips." She was frantically trying to end the live stream, but I could see the viewer count was climbing. People were screen recording, sharing clips, commenting rapidly. "Tyler, please, I can explain everything." "Explain what?" "Explain how you've been planning to divorce me from the moment you found out about my inheritance. Explain how you deliberately avoided the prenup conversation. Explain how you've been using me for months." She finally managed to end the stream, and we stood there in our living room, staring at each other. "It's not what you think," she said weakly. "It's exactly what I think. You just broadcast your entire plan to hundreds of people. You called me a fool. You talked about taking half of everything I inherited from my grandmother." She started crying, but it felt manipulative rather than genuine. "Tyler, I love you. I got caught up in the moment trying to seem cool for my followers. I would never actually do what I said." "Vanessa, you detailed a year-long plan. You talked about community property laws. You mentioned the joint account. This wasn't you trying to seem cool. This was you admitting to a plan you've been working on for months." "I was just talking. I didn't mean any of it." "Then why did you push so hard for the joint account? Why did you insist on expensive wedding plans? Why did you always bring up our money and our future home?" She couldn't answer that. She just stood there crying, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. The woman I'd fallen in love with had been a performance, a character she'd been playing to get access to my inheritance. "I'm going to stay at my brother's house tonight," I said. "I need time to think." "Tyler, please don't go. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. The wedding is in a week." "The wedding is cancelled, Vanessa." I meant what I said in the comments. I went upstairs and packed a bag while she followed me around, alternating between apologies and accusations. She said I was overreacting, that I was being too sensitive, that I couldn't take a joke. Then she'd switch to begging me to stay, promising she'd delete her social media accounts, saying she'd sign any prenup I wanted. I called my brother Jake, who's 34, and told him I needed a place to stay. He didn't ask questions, just told me to come over. When I got to his house, I finally broke down and told him everything. "Jesus, Tyler, I'm so sorry. I never liked her, but I never imagined she was capable of something like this." She had it all planned out, Jake. She was going to give it a year or two, then divorce me and take half of everything Grandma left me. "Did you record any of this? Screenshot the live stream?" "I didn't, but I bet some of her followers did. This kind of thing goes viral." Jake was right. By the next morning, clips of Vanessa's live stream were all over social media. Someone had screen recorded the entire thing and posted it with the caption, "Influencer accidentally admits to planning to scam her fiancé live on stream." It had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. I spent the day calling vendors and canceling wedding arrangements. The venue was understanding once I explained the situation. The caterer was less understanding, but eventually agreed to refund most of our deposit. The photographer had actually seen the viral clip and offered to waive the cancellation fee. Vanessa called me dozens of times, sent hundreds of texts, and even showed up at Jake's house. She alternated between begging for forgiveness and threatening to sue me for defamation and emotional distress. She claimed I'd ruined her reputation and destroyed her influencer career. "You ruined your own reputation," I told her through Jake's front door. "You admitted to planning to scam me on camera to hundreds of people." I was joking. Why can't you understand that I was just joking? Because joke or not, it made me realize how you really see me. It made me realize how you really see our relationship. Even if you were kidding, the fact that you would say those things, the fact that you would call me a fool and talk about taking my money, shows me exactly what you think of me. She eventually stopped coming by, but the calls and texts continued for days. I blocked her number and all her social media accounts. The most validating part of this whole experience was discovering that I wasn't the only one who'd had concerns about Vanessa. My family and friends started opening up about red flags they'd noticed but hadn't wanted to mention. My sister Claire, who's 28, admitted she'd always felt like Vanessa was performing around our family. My best friend Mike, who's 33, said he'd noticed how different Vanessa acted when I paid for things versus when she had to pay for things herself. "She was always sweet and affectionate when you were picking up the tab," he told me. "But when you suggested splitting bills or when she had to pay for her own stuff, she'd get moody and distant." I also discovered that Vanessa had been researching divorce laws and property rights. I found browser history on our shared laptop showing searches for community property inheritance and how to divorce without prenup. She'd even looked up information about my grandmother's estate, trying to determine exactly how much I'd inherited. The joint account we'd opened showed a pattern of spending that told the whole story. Right after we opened it, she'd started making expensive purchases she'd never made before. Designer clothes, spa treatments, luxury vacations she'd justified as content creation expenses. She'd spent nearly $30,000 of my inheritance money in 6 months. I closed the joint account and consulted with a lawyer about recovering the money she'd spent. The lawyer, Patricia Williams, who's 45, told me I had a good case for fraud, but that pursuing it would be time-consuming and expensive. "Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away," she said. "You've dodged a bullet here. If you'd married her, she could have taken half of everything. $30,000 is a cheap price to pay for finding out who she really was before it was too late." She was right. I was angry about the money, but I was grateful for the live stream. If she hadn't gotten comfortable and cocky, if she hadn't decided to brag to her followers about her plan, I might have married her. I might have spent years with someone who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck. The wedding was supposed to be yesterday. Instead, I spent the day with my family, visiting my grandmother's grave and thanking her for looking out for me even after she was gone. I felt like she'd somehow arranged for me to overhear that live stream, like she'd given me one final gift by helping me see the truth about Vanessa. I'm doing better now. I'm hurt, obviously, but I'm not devastated. I'm angry, but I'm not bitter. I'm disappointed, but I'm not hopeless. I learned a valuable lesson about protecting myself and my assets, and I learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong. I've started dating again, very slowly and carefully. I'm upfront about wanting a prenup, and I'm paying attention to how women react when I mention it. I'm also being more careful about sharing information about my financial situation. The viral clip of Vanessa's live stream has mostly died down, but occasionally, someone will recognize me as that guy whose fiancée tried to scam him on live stream. It's embarrassing, but it's also validating. People are supportive and understanding, and many have shared their own stories of being used or manipulated by partners. Vanessa's influencer career never recovered. She lost thousands of followers, and several brand partnerships dropped her. She ended up deleting most of her social media accounts and, according to mutual friends, moved back in with her parents. I don't feel sorry for her. She made her choices, and she has to live with the consequences. She chose to see our relationship as a business transaction. She chose to plan my emotional and financial destruction. She chose to broadcast her plan to hundreds of people. Every negative consequence she's faced has been the direct result of her own actions, but I do feel sorry for whoever she dates next. Because someone who can plan something so calculating and manipulative isn't going to change just because they got caught. They're just going to get better at hiding it. The most important thing I've learned from this experience is that actions matter more than words. Vanessa told me she loved me every day, but her actions showed me that she loved my money more. She said she wanted to build a life with me, but she was actually planning to destroy my life for her own benefit. I'm grateful for that live stream. I'm grateful for her arrogance and her need to brag to her followers. I'm grateful that she showed me exactly who she was before I legally bound myself to her. And I'm grateful that I trusted my instincts and walked away. I deserved better than someone who would call me a fool while planning to rob me. I deserved better than someone who would perform love while planning betrayal. Everyone deserves better than that. Now I'm focusing on rebuilding my life, protecting my assets, and finding someone who wants to be with me for me, not for what I can provide them. I'm optimistic about the future, and I'm confident that my grandmother would be proud of how I handled this situation. Sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to be a victim.